Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Edufuturists podcast. Wherever it is in the time space continuum, we are very, very glad that you have decided to join us. Whether you're watching us on video, or watch us on YouTube, or little snippets and whatnot, or you're listening on your podcast channel, you are very, very welcome. And we are grateful to be here. We are obviously pushing conversations about the future of education and trying to think about what's going to shape, what's that going to look like. And interestingly, we'll talk about lots and lots of things that are going to be pertinent in this future space, but actually relevant in this current space in the education world. Steve, my friend, how are you?
Yeah, really good. Life is full, as always. I feel like it's the same response, which is a little bit boring, but I can't give too much away in terms of the timestamp. So I just have to say life is full. And yeah, the kids are good.
That's what matters,
cold.
man.
So yeah,
eating could be on, could not be on, which identifies everything else. But yeah, things are good. Edufuturists side, heavy into the writing of things, and lots of exciting stuff to end 2025 and kick off 2026 with, which is wonderful. So yeah, I'd ask back, Ben, but I don't really care, if I'm honest. I don't want to.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Steve, you need to be careful because you are totally outnumbered by double boldies. Two bold fellas on the podcast today with clear glasses, and Steve's actually got his clear glasses on again today. So if you're watching this, then you're going to be like, "What's going on?" And if you're watching it in 10 years' time.
I don't want to be too offensive, but I didn't know if it was like a Right Said Fred reunion or what was going on. But
wow. I was thinking the Mitchell brothers, if I'm more honest.
Yeah, and I'm just like the real scratty lad that lives in the East End.
You're Peggy. You're Peggy from EastEnders.
My pub.
Anyway, we've done it again. We've got it into nonsense where we've got a guest in the background. But we are really, really pleased to be joined by Alex, and Alex will tell us a little bit about his story. So yeah, Alex, maybe give us a bit of an intro. Tell us a bit about your background and how you got to be doing what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys, and hello to everybody out there. I long story short, I've been teaching 25 years as a qualified teacher. Been working mostly in Birmingham throughout that time. Did do a year out in India on the streets as well, just to mix it up a little bit. I've worked in lots of different sectors, from the grammar schools to the poorest white working class school in Birmingham, to sort of middle income state secondaries as well, and all that kind of jazz. Done all kinds of things in education. Taught 25 years worth of A levels and GCSEs. Starting to really, and have been for some significant time for the last 10 years in particular, thinking that what we're doing is really not serving the interests and the future needs of our young people. And that's where, it crosses over with the brilliant work you guys do. And so over the last 10 years, I've been working in the career space, sort of straddling the worlds of work, working with all kinds of firms and the world of education, and trying to really flag up that we need to do more in terms of, it's great the government's doing stuff like, let's give 50 hours of work experience to young people. But, with AI really significantly impacting cognitive work, are those roles even going to be in there? So I think there's a need at the top level to be a lot more strategic and a lot more sort of forward thinking, again, which links with the work you're doing. So that's a little bit of the background. But basically, I've always wanted to be involved in education. Going back to my own work experience as a young teenager, I even did it there and did a gap year teaching in Australia. It's what I do. Not particularly good at much, but I love working with young people and helping them, inspiring them. But there's a particular enormous challenge and obstacle I think we're all facing right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't want to spend too much time diving into that, but I think what you've just talked about in regards to access to opportunities, that career element of education, it's only becoming, and I think is it like a V level, and there's T levels, and there's apprenticeships, which obviously I'm heavily in. But ultimately, what does the demographic of employment and employers and business look like in the UK? If we narrow down to England, actually a lot of those people are one or two man bands that actually couldn't take on work placement. And also, I think it was maybe Piers from Hundo so many moons ago in regards to the reason why he started that conversation in regards to actually what is the opportunities for work experience? Do you know, for so many, if your mum and dad are not connected to a particular industry or in that position, you might find yourself working in a PE department or a particular department of work experience within the school that you're at, because actually the opportunities there are limited. What does that do in regards to those career opportunities? If we're talking about intelligence, but and all of the things that we'll explore today, even just a starting point of really that is restricted by the connections you have and something that is completely out of your control as a young person.
Yeah, I mean, that's a massive issue. That's been an issue for a long time. The careers enterprise companies done some great work showing exactly what you're saying there. Something like 24% of the country do work experience in schools, not because they want to be teachers, but because there's the default is that's where you go if you're desperate for a placement. And of course, the government are upping the ante, and that's brilliant in terms of trying to help kids at least get a taste of that the world of work is very different from the world of traditional school education. But the really big issue that government is even struggling to grapple with is that the speed of change of AI in terms of capability and cognitive work is so fast that those roles aren't even going to be there necessarily up at the same scale, certainly within 10 years. So again, great that they're doing that piece. They need to resource it better. But really, I think there's a bigger question about AI impacting in cognitive work. And then what's really interesting, Ben and I have talked about this before, is that this time round, people going to be disruptive are those who are pursuing your degrees, your master's degrees, your postgraduate qualifications, and actually those people going to the skilled workforce of sort of more vocational work, the skilled apprenticeship routes into carpentry, electricians and plumbing. These people are going to be very well positioned for a long period of time. So it's going to be very interesting to see how people respond in a different way this time to a different type of challenge to the workplace. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Cultural capital, is still massively influential in terms of what kind of placements you get. So my own kids are 16 and 17 and they've just done work experience in the last couple of years. And what schools do is they send a letter out to the parents, you'll both know this, and say, okay, can you find them a placement? And it's a massive lottery and totally unequal and equitable. And that doesn't really change by the government just saying, let's increase the number of hours you're meant to be doing. So yeah, huge piece around that. But my area really is about AI, pace of change, and that even if you fulfill that requirement, it's just nowhere near enough for preparing them for what's coming and what's actually landing right now.
Yeah, and sorry, Ben, I know you're going to go into it, but even like if you think about schools and some of the schools' approaches, and rightly, there's a difference. Me and Ben talk about agency with guardrails for a lot of technology, but AI particular, that ultimately, how can we make sure that our young people, like the Rob Hoban conversation that we had, Ben, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, some crazy where and Rob from Agora at the time talked about there is no locker in life for mobile phones. Schools are doing that. But if you think about AI, there's a lot of schools that are doing positively where they're saying, how can we support our teachers and our young people to use it, to be supported with it in terms of the positive use of it. But actually, if you think a lot, that's whatever percentage of schools, a lot of schools will say turned off, not having it, everything else. If they then step into the world of work, even as work experience or into the future, there's a massive training need for employment because employers are going, right, we need it, we're using it, these are all the use cases we're doing, and we're stepping and exploring it. And then schools are coming in and going, you're not allowed it. So imagine in work experience, the kids are going to be doing so much more boring tasks because they're going to be faced with not using AI into an AI setting and gone, I don't even know what this looks like because I've been told to sit, listen, not ask any questions and not do anything on AI. So the ability to actually get a real life experience when they step into that employment first time around as actually paid employment or experience is going to be so diluted because of there's a void that's happening between real life and school life for young people.
Yeah, and right, absolutely right. And that chasm, that void has become a chasm due to lots of different things. But let's just drill down to a couple of things you said there, Steve. I would say that yeah, of course, they've got to meaningfully leverage AI in ways that can absolutely amplify and augment you and build your skills. But all the talk with the UK government is all about just streamlining efficiencies of teacher preparation and the focus of government, even with their memorandum of understanding in July with OpenAI, is about using AI to enhance the existing status quo. But I believe that whilst we need to recalibrate right now, a much more significant reforging, really entirely, the whole thing needs to be rethought. So that's true. But I'd also push back a little bit and say that, I support companies, SMEs up to global businesses with understanding AI, because for the first time, actually, rather than students going into the business environment and learning what the real world's about, the fact is that everyone is learning in real time. So I call it a real-time revolution. And that's what leads into my piece. Unlike what the government is doing and everybody else is doing, focusing on the technical aspects, I've been in the weeds of this, perhaps not as long as you guys, but for 3 years in a very, very deep way. And I understand that the pace of change is such that this is far, far more than a technical revolution. It's much more of a societal scale revolution, a human condition living scale of change. And actually my work, which is called Futures Readiness, is not about the technical proficiency, because everyone's doing that. But mine's about, let's explore in real time, critically, what's happening, what does it mean for us, how we should lean into the resources and the tools appropriately, and how we should guard ourselves against those risky behaviors that are already out there. I'm going to give you one stat to start with. Big data set in America, 3,000 representative survey. Right now, not to come, 25% of 20-year-olds in America are already using AI for porn and romantic relationships. And I can tell you that DSLs and safeguard leads haven't got a clue. And their annual like, let's do our safeguarding big talk is completely and utterly inadequate.
I could not agree more. And you can understand, if you're listening to this or watching this, why as soon as we had a conversation with Alex and we saw the work that Alex is doing, we knew that we needed to get a conversation in, because there's so much synergy in terms of the idea around guardrails, thinking about things appropriately. Yes, we want to have agency in that space, but we also don't want to throw young people in. And we've used examples multiple times about teaching to drive. Like, you don't just give kids the keys and go crack on. And obviously, eventually they're going to be driving on their own, but you help them through the process. And I think the work that you're doing, and thinking about that as a parent of teenagers, you're a parent of teenagers, I'm a parent of teenagers, Steve's kids are a little bit younger than ours, but what we have now is phenomenal in terms of their access, but also the lack of support, safeguarding, understanding. Parents are absolutely clueless, lots of them, not all of them. I'm not pointing fingers, but even I am. I think somebody who's tech savvy as I am, my wife's a police officer who's worked in child protection for years and years and years. They work in that technical space with social media, with online predators and all the stuff that goes with it. And even still, like, we spot things on our kids' phones that we were like, oh, I wouldn't have liked them to have watched that or seen that, and things get through even with our filters. Interestingly, I was speaking at a school recently, and they were talking about they were I was talking about just Snapchat, or Snap as it is now, and I was saying about the availability of AI within that, and I asked how many people knew that about Snap My AI. And less than 10 hands went up of a crowd of 400. And that told me that what is the number one friend on a kid's Snap friend list, which is powered by OpenAI, which is, and I talked about it from a school perspective, in the fact that the number one suggested questions for most kids are like, help me understand this science topic, or give me some quotes out of this book. It's homework help, and the teachers have no understanding. Never mind deepfake porn, like harmful stuff that's really helping. And I know that you're passionate about this. You can see it all over that. And but you're actually trying to do something about it, aren't you?
Yeah. Can I respond to a couple of things?
Of course, yeah.
I mean, it's a great organic conversation. We haven't planned anything. So, but a couple of things that I wanted to share, which just links to what you were saying, is Sam Altman, obviously from OpenAI, said this just about 3 or 4 days ago. He said, we're kind of discovering all of this together. We'll probably make new mistakes and just have to evolve quickly and have a tight feedback loop. He says, we can imagine all kinds of ways this technology does incredible good in the world, but also we can imagine obvious bad ones. I think there'll need to be co-evolution between people and technology in ways we cannot predict. So it's almost like, unlike, as you said, you wouldn't let a kid, my daughter's about to have her driving lessons for Christmas, right? There's no way I'm going to let her in the car without that incremental, progressive steps, or let's say on a trampoline. If you can't suddenly go into a crazy double flip without breaking your neck, right? You have to build up in increments and progressively develop your base of knowledge and understanding and resilience, all of those things. That's just not happening. I describe it as the unguardrailed Wild West. And I'll give you an example, right? So this is real data from OpenAI, came out October 27th. OpenAI says that every 7 days, around 560,000 people may be exchanging messages with ChatGPT that indicate they're experiencing mania or psychosis. 1.2 million every seven days are possibly expressing suicide ideations. And another 1.2 million are prioritizing chatting with ChatGPT over loved ones or other support networks. And Zuckerberg himself has said he believes people don't have enough friends and that AI friends are going to be the way forward. So, there's this, I don't want to be negative. It's much easier to start with the negative points because it grabs people's attention and wakes DSLs and head teachers up. I'm speaking to 25 head teachers on Thursday and trying to say to them, look, you're just not, it's not a blame culture. You're super busy. You're doing the most important work. You're just not equipped for this challenge. And if education starts with safeguarding as this so-called golden thread, we're just nowhere near the ballpark. And government hasn't, sorry to say it, hasn't got a clue. Until very recently, they didn't even understand the pace of scaling that you'll see on organizations like Meta, the independent evaluations of the progress of autonomous real life work. They just weren't even consciously aware of the scale of impact. So it's really frightening. People can't look to government, even your training course. I've got friends of mine in very senior schools, very senior positions, come and show off to me and say, hey, Alex, I've just done the Oxford University AI Governance and Leadership course. And I'm going, mate, that was a waste of £11,000. I mean, it's not, it's great to go on it, but in a year's time, none of those threats are the current threats. None of those capabilities are the current capabilities. And so they don't realize that the old model of annual CPD is not how it has to go. It has to be iterative, co-evolving, like nuanced, critical views, because the technology is not stopping in its torrent of speed releases. And I'll give you just one last quote because I know I'm talking too much, but I'll give you Demis Hassabis, Google DeepMind. He said recently, I can't keep up with internal releases from Google DeepMind alone, let alone everything else. So, this government is not equipped. Education boards are not equipped. Multi-academy trusts who are struggling with finances and time and getting, there's just no way can they respond in due time to these threats and opportunities. And the opportunities, of course, are unbelievable. But let's just think about it. What do kids naturally do? Kids will naturally go for the shortcut. I mean, I remember my son, right, during COVID, in the so-called online RE lesson, he had it on and muted himself and was playing his like Nintendo or whatever it was, right? And my daughter's goody two shoes, so she would never have done that. But my son is more typical of what most teenagers do: risky behavior, go for the cheeky shortcuts, and therefore the big challenge isn't Terminator; it's gradual disempowerment of their cognitive function by offloading to tools which produce better outcomes, unfortunately. And this is all the way up to university, because I work with Dr. Shane McLaughlin from the School of Education at UOB. And I went to see him recently. We're talking about the stuff we're doing with Futures Readiness. He goes, I'm saying, mate, I mean, at least you guys are doing the real learning here, right? You've been critical, you're really engaging, really thinking. He goes, no. We can't really accurately discern when they're not using AI. we now need bums on seats. We're now a pressurized business. We have to make sure the outcomes are good. And we too are spoon feeding them and thus ill preparing them for the world. So this goes all the way from I think, from about year 5, when they move away from beautiful learning that goes on in primary school to let's start focusing on that damn SATs test, and runs all the way through now to even master's level education. And the problem is the government thinks it's great because they can show these numbers on these scores, but it is madness. And you don't need me to tell you guys, you're embedded in all this, but it drives me wild.
Couple of thoughts on that. Lovely stats and lovely thoughts there. I think my interest, and it goes back to a couple of conversations, things that we probably pocketed and explored with so much on education. And again, people always go, don't be so negative, and we'll talk about the breadcrumbs and how we improve it. But ultimately, there's 2 things, or I want to talk about 2 things. The first is, in leadership and in education, digital for so long has been a secondary and an option. We went into it during COVID and literally just fell back into exactly what we were doing. So a lovely post from Free Spires Multi-Academy Trust saying that we learned nothing from it, which is such a shame because there was so much there. We only did it because we had to. The only reason why people are stepping into AI and putting it as a policy thing is they think that we're not creating enough space, whether that's a DSL, whether that's the leaders, to really think about this is not optional. Digital really shouldn't have been an option. You are full in education with all this other stuff, and you've been thinking digital. Now AI is putting this thing into us. We didn't learn from social media, and we need to now learn from the AI element, because if we don't get this right and education doesn't focus down on this and make sure this is a priority and should be a priority for every single leader, then ultimately we're going to get it badly wrong and we'll do all of the other stuff.
And I feel like I'm just going to jump in there as well, because you think, like, even when we're doing, like, we're smack bang, you'll be able to work out the time, we're smack bang towards the announcement on the new curriculum assessment review in the UK and in England. And even you look at the demographics of the people that are sat around that table, they're all professors from universities, or they're a couple of think tanks. And you're thinking, it's the same people, like, rearranging those deck chairs. And then we've got the conversations about where you're saying about we didn't learn anything in that space. And you're reading all these people that are writing these reports that are saying there is no evidence that screen time learning is going to make a difference in versus traditional education models. Okay, fine. I understand what you're trying to argue there, but the world, the society, is screen heavy. So we have a moral responsibility to do things around screen time, to think about AI, to navigate social media and deep fakes and pornography, like we're talking about in that space. Like, it's not an option just because some researcher somewhere has said that the evidence says that screen-based learning doesn't have the impact that we thought it did. So we should probably avoid doing it.
Yeah. So the world has changed. If we continue to do things that we've always done, like, even for us, we're probably about the same age. I think, Alex, you're probably younger than Ben, definitely younger than me.
I'm the oldest.
Well, you've had an easier paper on then, let's put it that way, or good moisturiser. But I think I grew up born in the 80s, kind of became a teenager in the 90s. My upbringing and my life was very, very different. My parents' life was very, very different. People always go, I love to read a book. Ben still loves to read a book, and so do I, but I'm heavy more audiobooks. But if you think about, for our young people, I tell the story a million times about Ella. My kids are 5 and Ollie's going to be 4 in January. The world that they are stepping into as young people is so different that we cannot continue to do and go, oh, look, books were brilliant. Let's not forget away from the handwriting. I was like, absolutely. But I used to ride my bike. If I wanted to meet my mates when I was growing up, even as a teenager, I went to the park. If they weren't at the park, I then went around to the mum and dad's house, and I told Ella this story, and she went, what did you do if they weren't? I said, well, I knocked on the door, asked if they were home. Mum and dad probably didn't know where they were, or they were so-and-so, and I just went home. She went, what did you do then? I said, I just went home. She's like,
and you knew they were there if they were biked outside on front lawn anyway, didn't you?
The world is such a different place. We have to face the facts. You do, and you just look at it and you go, the world is so different. We have to be honest and face the fact that we would love to have rose-tinted glasses and still deliver education and the world to be how we were. Right. It's not the world, so we need to plan education. And the other point is, not just for leaders.
Alex, I'll forget it otherwise. My working memory is horrendous. You made some really interesting points, and I love all that.
It's because you use AI that you've got no working memory.
Yeah, could be, or even making notes on it myself. Well, first of all, for me, it was 2 p.m. outside HMV in Bromley in southeast London, where I grew up. And if your boys didn't turn up, you were out for the day. Unlucky. That's it. And then interestingly, people were much more punctual, weren't they, in those days? Because you had to get there by the bus, and therefore you went super early to make sure you didn't miss out. But anyway, enough nostalgia. I love that point, and I talk about it all the time. So let's look at it. If you're in year 7 now, the time they're talking about very significant scale of change to cognitive level roles is over a 10-year time horizon. That's year 7s today in school coming out after a 2-year post-18 course. So that's our current year 7s. So the route memory test is a complete and utter waste of time. In fact, I'd say it's a disgrace what goes on. And I'm that strong about it. And it's not the teachers. They're trying their best. They're working their asses off. They sacrifice their families and lives. I mean, I've done it myself my whole career, but it's just not working. And then if you think about reception kids, little sweet reception kids, they come out in 17 years' time. This curriculum review is clearly inadequate. It's moving the deck chairs, as you said, and we need much more significant scale change. The problem is you've just got pockets of excellence, mediocrity, and indifference all over the place, and some doing nothing. And there's just no strategic coordination. This is where you guys come in and do some great work with your writing and bringing together interesting people, and you can possibly, I hope, help with that in terms of getting that messaging back to government.
And yeah, and I suppose that's kind of where we're trying to go. And for those of you who aren't aware, the roadshow work that we're doing that's currently underway and moving forward over the next few months in partnership with Parent Pay Group, we're trying to not just talk about this. We acknowledge that for however many years we have a wonderful podcast with somebody, and then we write something nice and we put something out into the world, and we go, "This is great." We're writing a book and we're going, "Oh, this is great," and then nothing shifts. So we don't want to be those people that are armchair critics. And I know you're the same. And actually the work that you're doing is not being an armchair critic. You're going, okay, if nobody else is doing this, we'll create something. And it's part of the reason why we're doing this stuff with the roadshow. We're creating action plans. We're wanting to write these papers. We're trying to put this pressure and create this content that people are going to go, we've got to listen. We've got to do something different rather than just keep kicking the can down the road and pretending it's going to go away.
Yeah.
So I think it leads us really nicely into...
Can I just make one more point?
No.
Just before we go...
No. Yeah, of course you can, Steve. Go on.
And so we talked about...
You two remind me of the podcast Fight Disciples.
Laurel and Hardy.
No, Fight Disciples bantering at each other. You seen Fight Disciples? Do you like the boxing?
No, I've not seen it. No,
I've not seen it. You've got
to check it out. You two exactly like those boys. It's hilarious.
So before we step into all of the other things, the other thing we have to tackle. So we know what's wrong with leadership, down from systems, structures, changes to and the ability to actually do any change quickly. But also, what we talked about is, I think it was Alex. You mentioned it in regards to if somebody masters is a little bit different, because ultimately at the end you should be having a conversation to actually demonstrate your understanding of it and everything else. That doesn't mean that you've enjoyed it. But if I like anything, I commit to it. If I enjoy something, I'm more likely to commit to it. What we're doing is saying, do you imagine if somebody didn't have to watch the Netflix service and all you had to do is run it through AI and say, all I want to do is, if my mates have watched that program, I just need to know that I have enough knowledge to be able to interject and have a conversation and give some examples, basically pass a test. And what we're saying is, we don't want people to enjoy and actually have light a fire under them and find a passion in their learning. What we want to do is just get them to be able to regurgitate. Well, literally, I wouldn't sit through another series ever again if I didn't enjoy it. I don't have to. I can quickly just go, turn it off. There is so much choice out there now that ultimately I don't have to. If I don't enjoy it, I go on to something else. Same for learning, same for everything else. What we're doing is, I don't think we're finding passion. I don't think we're finding enjoyment. A lot of people that will want to learn everything else. But what about the other 80% or whatever the statistic is of people who just we don't measure engagement. We mention attention. I know we talk about this is a broad brush, but everything in education is just, let's go through all these subjects. Let's give you all this knowledge and you regurgitate an exam. ultimately, and I go back to my kids, streaming service, curious, impatient. The world is so different now that at every level of education, if we do not get it right and we do not find that passion and get them to enjoy it. We had a guest on the podcast, I'm not going to call it out, but they said, education is not about fun. Well, I'm not being funny, but, wow, it might be fun for you. This is the thing where, like, everybody enjoys it. And I just think what we're doing is we're then just going to learners, go through this cycle. I'm not being funny, but if they're bored and don't like it, why are they not going to use AI to solve the problem? Because they do not enjoy it and they just know that all they have to do is pass the test.
Great.
And that then demonstrates that they move on to the next.
This episode of Edufuturist is powered by Integrated Systems Europe, the must-attend event for educators, technologists and institutional leaders seeking to shape the future of learning.
From the 3rd to the 6th of February 2026, ISE returns to Barcelona, uniting the brightest minds and the boldest ideas in the edtech industry. Join us and push back beyond the possibilities.
The world of education is changing, and education technology is helping to change it. Different teaching styles, more flexible delivery, and a wider range of resources. All of these mean EdTech is playing a greater role than ever. And that applies to learning taking place in the classroom, the lecture hall, the corporate training center, or delivered online. Integrated Systems Europe is the world-renowned annual tech show for the systems integration and audio-visual industry. At ISE 2026...
Got to jump back in, Steve, because the problem is you're both making so many points, and maybe we can come back next year or 6 months' time and follow up, because it's too much to talk about. But okay, yeah, I believe it's still essentially a Victorian model. I think it's absolutely insane that you've got 35 kids, quite often 35 kids. I know because I've delivered to them for years and years. In a room, every hour, another 35 sets of kids, all at different places in their background, understanding family context, what's happened the night before, where they've slept, and suddenly all have to do the same period of learning at the same time. It's absolutely insane. It's madness. And what's optimistic with what's to come is that, we know that AI can be personalized. We know it can be Socratic. We know it can guide people through their own learning. But back to the other point that you were saying is if they don't love it, they don't have the passion, they're not going to use it in that Socratic ways to self-develop, self-enhance, right? So that's all absolutely correct. And I think all the things you said are correct, but we've got to take to solve the problem, we've got to go back to the incentive structure. The incentive structure is max out the test scores. It's not that teachers or even head teachers want to thrash everybody to jump through the exam hoops, but that's what we do because we have no emotional strength back to fight back. Teachers are exhausted. They're doing the best they can. Since COVID, there's been not a single breath. We hemorrhage new starters because the system is broken from start to finish. So we need to be critical. We need to push back and look at early examples, like, for example, Alpha School over in Texas, where they use personalized AI to get the kids to go through their maths, English, science, all those core basics, of course, that they must have, right? And then in the afternoon, and by the way, the data shows from those schools that they're making much, much more faster progress and actually passing those key essential baseline qualifications much better. Get that done through the AI support at the kids' pace, in their own time, gamified, making it more interesting, personalized. Already there's personalized textbooks now where it can personalize to your context, the concept of geography or history or maths, right? Really exciting things are going to be coming. The problem is the intervening group of kids right now who are neither here in the old system nor in the new world. They are the ones at risk of being particularly disenfranchised in the future. And then in the afternoon at Alpha School, back to your point there about passion and interest and finding your unique thing that lights your fire, they are allowed to explore whatever they want in the afternoon, whether it's, I don't know, Japanese culture or engineering, mechanics. They can do what they like. And the teacher isn't a teacher. The teacher is simply a mentor and a support as they self-explore those areas. So some really exciting models. Now, the realism is that in schools in the UK, there's no way that scale of change is going to happen any time soon. And so what I say to teachers is, and what I encourage head teachers is, I challenge them to recalibrate just a touch, because you still need those foundational principles for sure. because you guys mentioned yourselves that there's, the misinformation, the disinformation, the squeezing of people to the polarized extremes, which we're seeing through social media and have done for a long time. That's going to intensify with personalized one-to-one creation of content, right? That's all happening. And so we do need to do some foundations and some support, but they can't do it overnight. So I'm saying to teachers, listen, I'm saying, hey, teachers, take the risk, be bold, drop down some percentiles in your value added scores, and actually do learning for the sake of loving the subject, right? I know that kids historically, before they had me for history, didn't love history. But then you come in with the approach of real passion, real enjoyment, and you can even switch people on who historically weren't. So there's all these different issues that tie in. And at some point, I would love to go back, if we can, to the Futures Readiness bit I'm doing about being preemptive and doing things in advance. But really, I know there needs to be a whole reforging, recasting through the furnace. But realistically, lads, tell me, when do you think that's going to happen?
I don't know, and I think actually I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, because we know that there's multiple layers that sit in that, in terms of off qual, in terms of the exam. What did Russell Cayley call it? The assessment industrial complex. And all the conversations that are built a part of that, the university system that is struggling itself, but actually then determines what the curriculum looks like. There's lots and lots and lots of layers, and interestingly, it's still aligned politically to a party on an election cycle. So therefore, there's a huge challenge there. I know that our friends, I know one of them isn't with us anymore, but Sir Tim Brighouse and Mick Waters talked about this in about our schools, that there isn't a way to do this differently. There's options to do this differently. The way we're trying to write about pick a mix schooling would be a great option to allow that devolved funding, and there's options. It's just whether that people are willing to go, do you know what, we need to move away from that babysitting, socialization, fit in an economic model system of education to actually we're thinking about learning. I've written a piece recently about the difference between the future of education and the future of school, because we conflate those ideas between education and school, that education isn't just school. But actually schooling is fundamental into that space, but it isn't. They're not the same thing. Learning happens, education happens regardless of it. But and interestingly tied to it, I think we can go here. The conversation around futures readiness and the work that you're doing in that space. It'd be really good to maybe just give us an insight into what that looks like, and we'll obviously link into the show notes so that people can sign up and get involved with that. But what are you trying to do? Because you're not just somebody who's spouting. That's the key bit, and I want everybody to hear that Alex is passionate. He's got the data that says all this, but this is not just somebody pointing the finger. It's somebody who's trying to do something about this and prepare for that futures, and the futures plural. That is, that's really important. I know in your thinking. So maybe tell us a little bit about what futures readiness is.
Cool. So I've been working on it for 3 years, and it's been evolving over time. It was initially underpinned by sort of a new version of the skills taxonomy, with stuff like the need for resilience to perma change, the ability to be able to move your position as the evidence really moves fast. So it started with a sort of a skills framework that I worked on with the University of Birmingham, and then as the pace of change continued to accelerate, on top of that, it's just all those key new skills, traditional ones as well. When we talk about collaboration now, it's collaboration between AI and humans, not just humans to humans, obviously. So we did that first, that piece of work, and that underpins everything, permanent upskilling, the adaptability, of course, again, that resilience, because the hardest things for humans is to deal with permanent change. And that's the only thing that's now going to be true. Demis Hassabis is, again, Hassabis recently was interviewed by the Greek Prime Minister, and he said, tell us about the next 10 years, what's coming. You're really at the cutting edge. And of course he is. And he said, I can't tell you what's coming next week, let alone in 10 years. He said, the one thing's guaranteed is massive change. And I propose to people, even in the AI space, who do work in education, I suspect that most of them still don't truly believe the scale of change that's going to be unfolding over this crazy disruptive decade. So what we do at Futures Readiness is get ahead of that and help kids. We develop what we call AI discernment, and that means knowing when to leverage AI well. That can boost you. And the fact is, you're absolutely right. Learning goes on all the time. Schooling is just that set stuff, 5 or 6 hours a day. Far more of their daily learning is, of course, on their devices and in their lives at home. I totally agree with you. So, what we show them is how to leverage those resources appropriately, when to sort of act with caution and say, well, I could use this, I might use it a couple of times, but maybe I shouldn't become reliant upon this kind of functionality. And then when to actually actively resist or even challenge inappropriate use cases. And it's really difficult. So our work kind of armors the kids, gives them half a chance at metacognition to think, actually, is this use case going to help me in the long term, as opposed to with this particular single homework or test preparation? And really, there's no excuse, because all the resources are there now. Like, you can learn about anything you want. And that goes back to that piece that you were talking about, which is, helping them find those areas that they're really passionate about, because then they will spend endless hours researching, delving into, utilizing tools to learn things that they really want to. But then I do go back to, I still think they need the foundations in school, not the foundations for the test anymore. That's my key distinguisher. They need the foundations of that base to be able to confront and push back on really powerful, information spreading that is very, very persuasive. More persuasive, we already know. Very old models like 4.5 Turbo was more powerful than trained psychologists in taking people away from some deeply entrenched conspiracy theories. So if they haven't got critical thinking, which is key to what we do, if they haven't got those really base solid facts on the world, they really are exposed to the potential dystopian control of AI getting much, much more capable. I mean, we look at the history. I don't want to be too cynical on government, but look at the history of America, watching Angela Merkel back in Germany. And has ever any of these technologies ever not been used as backdoors into and therefore the kids have no chance if they can't arm themselves with a little bit of discernment and thinking, right, how do I use this properly? How do I not use this? And so that's what we try and do. We call them real-time resources for a real-time revolution. And I think the key is that the teachers need to be humble enough to say that they're all in reception together at the same time and will permanently be so. You said yourself, you can't keep up. I can't keep up. If I do a conference, doing one later this week, I feel pretty stressed that I'm not going to be able to advise young people about how to navigate this. And so my service is helping teachers and leaders and kids to focus on learning, teaching, and leading. And I distill like a funnel, not everything, because that's impossible, but real signal, the real key information that they need to intellectually wrestle with. And our key USP really is that every fortnight, the kids actually have a real space to really say what they think about a new technology. So, for example, the new AirPod that can do instant translation in your ear. And what do the kids think of that? And like someone saying, well, that might undermine the desire to learn an MFL. But someone else is saying, but we were lucky enough to go to Japan and I couldn't communicate. I'm probably never going to go there again. So it was massively helpful to have dialogue. So they come up with this really deeply thought and thinking views. And I'll just give you one more. So this is a year one kid. I mean, our resources actually start from year 5 and 6, but one school thinks they're so valuable, they distill them down even further. And it was about Project Astra, when, the AI assistant was helping them with their gaming. And this one little boy said, oh, it's amazing. I'm going to break through the level so fast because it's giving you live real-time feedback on your gaming technique, and is able instantly to search the internet for all the tips that are out there in real time. And this boy loved it. And then what was really amazing was the girl said, well, I'd like to challenge that thought. Isn't the idea of the problem solving using our brains? So that's what we do. We're not obsessed with outcomes of meaningless test scores. We're interested in actually getting kids becoming critical thinkers, to arm them to leverage AI, because it's going to change the world, but it's going to change the world in both magnificent ways and horrendous ways. And I find it so difficult when I'm trying for a not-for-profit to get our message out, and people, unfortunately, unlike you guys, don't quite get it yet. because I truly believe, and I would encourage the audience to have a look at some free resources, perhaps you wouldn't mind putting out in the notes. I truly believe it's the most important 20 minutes. It's 10 minutes video with pause point interactions facilitated by the skilled teachers. The most important 20 minutes of all the learning they do, because it's really helping them understand fast-paced change, make sense of this craziness, and have clarity amidst confusion.
Yep.
I don't know if Ben's going to come
And
in
to be
or not.
fair, sorry, Steve, I'll just jump in quick. For those people who, from a practical perspective, those fortnightly videos with some thought points, the training materials for staff, the exemplar materials and resources, the like members area framework to work through, referral thing to go on to us. There's like loads and loads of fantastic resources that you've been working on over the years, and from my perspective, looking at it from an annual fee for primary school at 400 quid and an annual fee for a secondary school for 800 quid, it feels like, hold on a minute, you're getting all these resources, videos, frameworks, straight off out of the box, essentially, that as long as you've got a skilled teacher in the room that can help navigate the conversation, you are, and I know that's going to be an important part of it, you're helping upskill the conversation that this is the key bit that you said right at the beginning, which is we don't have time to do this. We can't keep up. Governance can't keep up. Leaders can't keep up. But somebody who is actually doing this all day, every day, is thinking about, okay, what does this mean for our young people and how do we prepare them? And interestingly, prepare them in a world that is changing. So it's not necessarily about you now know how to prompt a tool, like you said. It's about how to navigate what is currently happening and then as ready as we can be for futures that are going to shift, that development of that ability, agility, resilience, and all the other bits that go with it, isn't it?
So it's amazing you guys get to speak to so many different contributors, because my piece, if it's like a massive jigsaw puzzle of the response required for the scale of AI revolution, is just one of those pieces. And you're meeting people fitting all those different pieces. You yourselves, of course, are contributing a very significant chunk with your Edufuturists, all the work that you do. And then it needs some people to come together and say, okay, you need that societal preparer piece that Futures Readiness do. You need the best leverage, proficiency tools. You need all these different aspects. And that's the sort of knitting together of these patchwork pieces of best practice for the big picture. And I think that's going to take some time to evolve. I think we will get there, because I believe educationists are the best people. They really believe in young people. But if they're not even aware of the scale of opportunities and challenges, they can't respond.
There's never been more of a need for a pick and mix education, Ben, have there? The ability to not just go to one organisation and one source of information, but actually the world of education is pick and mix, where ultimately it's that jigsaw puzzle of the pulling together of multiple sources that might not be just a traditional school, that could be inside or outside of education, all of those contexts. We won't give too much away about the book, but ultimately that ability to really start to think differently around the education that our young people are getting, rather than just the way that we learn and our parents learn, and not what we've always done. That actually, go back to Cigar to Mitra, and we say it all the time, but you can fix new problems with old solutions. And I think we're just constantly circling the drain of doing exactly that we constantly do it and just think, oh, well, we'll just do a little bit of a change of a curriculum. I don't think it's enough. I think we have to really start to think about it, and then think about all the impact from every stakeholder and every level of engagement. And AI is a conversation, absolutely, but it's such a prominent, needed conversation right now that it really demonstrates the multiple sources and the multiple organization approach to solving a problem rather than just one person. And I talk about often that collective genius from Professor Linda Hill at Harvard Business School, that actually often people think and they go, genius is, or a way to solve something is one person like an Einstein that comes up with everything and literally brilliant. But ultimately, if you think about Pixar and Google and all these organizations, it isn't. It is hundreds, if not thousands of people coming together and collectively bringing an innovation to and creating a stage for other people to perform on and respond something. And I think, me and Ben talk about all the time that the Edufuturists is just a platform and a vehicle for others to really demonstrate their value and the way that they can solve a problem that is out there. And I love the approach from Professor Linda Hill. A new book comes out actually pretty soon, and I'm really excited to read it because I just think that is innovation at the heart. But if you go back to the way that we ask our learners to regurgitate information, everything that is wrong is just sit there in isolation and think you're going to solve a problem. I think we need to come together collectively, bring diverse thought, and really challenge and bring rebel ideas into innovation in every aspect of education.
There's a big challenge ahead. So 2 things I'll leave you guys with. Love your response on. Do you see how government, and bear in mind I've been through over 20 Secretaries of State for Education in my time already. I don't think one of them knows more about education than I do. So I've been doing it for 25 years plus. What do you think about them responding only in terms of ed tech tools to streamline the test score? Because their response so far has only been, how can we use AI to plug gaps of teacher specialism? How can we stop the hemorrhaging of teachers by doing some workload preparation support? How do you respond to the fact that that's the very narrow prism they're thinking about?
That you are thinking about education in the way that it has been, not the one it will and what it needs to become. You 100%. Are thinking about AI that will, when people go into a room, AI as a response to a test, AI as a teacher, the way that they are. There isn't enough teachers. There isn't enough organisations. What we are doing has been wrong for such a long period of time. I didn't enjoy education because it wasn't right for me. And if we continue to do it, that
No, you didn't enjoy school.
Exactly. I didn't enjoy school because of how my education, and I think that gap of has only been growing because of the way that our young people are developing and the generations and generations as they evolve. And I think we need to make sure that the solution for AI and some of the ways it can be used is not even in education as it exists.
100%.
So we are talking on the classroom of the future stage at Brilliant next week, and we're actually going to say, what happens if there is no classroom? What happens if there is no classroom? And to then say, well, ultimately, you're putting it in 4 walls and a building that we are learning right now when we're not in the same room. I've just had a coffee with somebody, and that was learning. Learning is a very different mechanism. Yeah. You're just putting it into the fixed format of how you want to do it and trying to solve those problems. Yeah. Think about a different way and a different and learning, not teaching and learning in education. Think about learning.
I think we're trying to iterate Blockbuster, aren't we? When Netflix is and a different model is out there, and I know that's the trite thing that a lot of people say, and I know that Russell talked about that in his Firefly effect book. But that's, I think we're just trying to.
Another picture is, and again, I've stolen this from someone else, but it's true of business as well as schools, is that they've got this traditional soap bar, right? And with use of LLMs or multimodal models, they're just looking to streamline a few efficiencies of traditional ways of working. Whereas actually what they need to do is complete process change. So at the moment, you've got the bar of soap, the traditional way, and they're just putting the pump element of, your hand sanitizer pump on top of the soap, which isn't going to do anything substantial good. So business has realized, and you probably saw that MIT study, which said that 95% of trials in businesses weren't working. And everyone goes on about that. I even went to an event at Birmingham Tech Week last week, 2 weeks ago, where I was speaking at, and they were saying about that. And I said, hang on, you didn't actually read the report, did you? Because what it actually said is not down to the lack of capability of AI to totally transform the processes from the get-go of businesses. It was the poor use of AI that led to the failure of those things. And I'd argue that we're going into a phase of poorly using AI just to maintain or streamline the existing model. And again, I think we're all saying the same thing. It needs a bigger structural picture. And I'd love to continue talking with you guys about that, sharing best practice from lots of, this mosaic piece that you're bringing together, and encourage you to keep doing it, because I think it is down to the grassroots professionals to lead this charge.
Absolutely. We always finish with three quick fire questions, and today's going to be no different. So I will start, Ben in the middle, and then me at the end, if that's okay. So the first question is, if schools were judged like restaurants by how much customers actually enjoy the experience, what would change overnight?
What would change? Well, who's the customers? The customers, unfortunately, is government. The customers aren't the kids.
So do we need to change the customers?
Of course, it needs to be totally changed. Exactly. It needs to start with saying, what are the kids' needs? What do they actually need to be prepared for? And really the big question, what are we doing what is education for? If it's for preparing them for a world of work that doesn't exist, they need to change now. And you can't get me going on it, because it makes me so wild with fury that what we're doing is not only soul destroying and causing lots of anxiety and mental health issues and low self-esteem, it's actually not even serving the purpose it's intended for. So yeah, it's a tough one. It drives me insane, as it does you boys. That's why you wouldn't spend so long writing these great books and doing these tours and things.
Yeah, amazing. What's the most dangerous myth that educators tell themselves to avoid real change?
These quick fire questions are tough. What are you guys doing to me here? Can you repeat it one more time, please, Dan?
Of course I can. What's the most dangerous myth that educators tell themselves to avoid real change?
Okay. That what DFE says and what government says is the most important thing.
Love that. Final one. If a 10-year-old asked you why they have to go to school, what would you actually say?
So make some mates, make some really good mates, and have some shared experiences. And those friendships will carry for life if you have enough deep shared experiences. And if I reflect on my own university experience, my mate I haven't seen for 30 years. His son's just got leukemia. Been in touch with him, and we're all getting involved in supporting him. And it wasn't because of the damn course I studied at postgrad. It was my PGCE. It's because we had deep, meaningful relationships that counted and meant something. So I say, go there, make some great mates, and make some great memories.
Now that is what we're talking about. That is a reason to go to school, and I would absolutely love that. It's been one of those conversations where you just think we had some like talking points. We've done one of them, I think, and these are the best kind of conversations, because what we know is that it's somebody who's a practitioner, it's somebody who's a theorist, but it's also somebody who is passionate in this space, who is trying to do something different, who is trying to equip people, and we're really grateful that people like you do what you're doing. And it's been a conversation that has gone in loads of different directions. It's not about this AI tool, it's not about this AI program or your product, and that's what I love about this, by the way, that you haven't wanted to push the product. You just wanted to talk about the stuff, and it's just hammered to go in there. But for those people who are listening to this and like what they've heard, or even if they don't like what they heard, but they realize they need something, the links for the free resources and how to sign up for Futures Readiness will be in the show notes. And as we keep doing with all our guests, we don't just want to talk the talk, we want to help walk the walk. So if there's ways that we can amplify what's been happening, if you want to suggest guests, or if you want to get us involved in some of your conversations, then please do. We're committed to there being something different, just like Alex has been doing. So thank you for listening to another episode of the Edufuturists podcast. And Alex, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll speak again very, very soon.